Today, I want to look at three questions. Why did this war between the United States and Iran start? How will this war end? And what will happen after this war ends? And to answer these three questions, we need to discuss the nature and structure of our reality. And the first thing you need to understand, which is very hard, is that our world is a hallucination. It's a collective fantasy, all right? So to understand this idea, let's look at Plato's allegory of the cave, okay? Plato's allegory of the cave. And so in this cave, we're deep inside the earth and it's dark. There's some light coming in, but not much. And we're all chained in a line together, okay? And there's about 1 million of us. We're on the floor and we're chained to the ground. And we can't really move. We can't get up, we can't move around. Even our necks are shackled. So we can't turn around and see the world around us. Okay, so there's about 1 million of us all sitting down and staring at a wall together, okay? And this wall is blank. Behind us is great fire. And there are people around this fire, okay? We don't know who they are, but they are free to move around. And what they do is this: they take puppets, and then they reflect the puppets onto the wall, creating shadows. And we're mesmerized by these shadows, because before we're staring at a blank wall, and now there are these moving shadows. And we think these shadows are real because we don't know any better. So we give them names. Okay, we give them names and we create a language in order to tell stories about these shadows. And this becomes really our collective reality, okay? So another way of saying this is that reality is a collective conscious which is really a hallucination. Okay? All right. So there are certain things about this reality that we need to keep in mind. Okay? So first of all, what's really important to understand is that what creates this reality is our conscious, our imagination, our perception. Not anyone else, us, okay? So in other words, the wealth in the society is our consciousness. The amount of thought we put into something. And so let me give you an example. Let's just say that I were to ask you to make a vase to sell on the marketplace, okay? While you're making this vase, if you are listening to music, if you are chatting with a friend, if you're not fully conscious and focused and attentive about making this vase, it won't be very good. But if you are completely focused on creating the most beautiful vase you can, and you're not distracted by anything, then this vase will be beautiful and therefore more valuable in the marketplace. Okay? So in other words, it is our conscious attention that creates wealth in this world. And it is really money or capital that extracts and stores our consciousness and turns it into wealth. All right? So that's a really important concept that most people don't understand, but you need to understand this if we are to understand the nature of reality itself. Okay, so that's the first thing you need to understand. This reality is structured to extract our consciousness in order to create wealth for the elite, for these people. Okay, and historically, there have been different mechanisms that you can use in order to extract and store wealth. All right, so you have maybe religion, okay? And so think of pyramids, right? Because pyramids in Egypt are able to focus your attention and motivate you to do certain actions, okay? To engage in religious worship. but really any temples. So that's one form of capital. Another form of capital, of course, is the idea of stories. Homer, right? Homer is the father of Greek civilization because he wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey, which is able to focus people's attention and drive them to great things. Then you, of course, in today's world, you have the Bible. And the main mechanism to extract and store wealth in today's world, of course, is the US dollar. Now, but there's another force that's being created in order to replace the US dollar. And this is called artificial intelligence. All right, so what we'll discuss later on is that there's actually a war going on for the soul of humanity, for the human consciousness between the US dollar, the old world order, and artificial intelligence, the new world order, okay? But I want you to keep this in mind. All right, so that's the first thing I want you to understand. Second thing that I need you to understand is that these people, we don't know who they are, okay? But what we do know is that they don't force us to do anything. There's not enough of them, okay? The way they maintain power is through manipulation and trickery and deception. And we know this because in Plato's allegory of the cave, one day for whatever reason, one guy decides, you know what? I feel as though this is not the real world. I feel as though there's something outside this cave. So he or she starts messing around with the chains and realizes, these aren't chains. These are just like ropes. I can just like get rid of them. And this chain around my neck, it's like a ribbon. I can snap it off. And he doesn't know why he does this, but he does this. He does do this. And when he does this, they don't even care. Like, whatever, man, do whatever you want. And so he releases himself. He's blind because he's been in the dark all his life, but somehow he recognizes that there's this light, okay, outside the cave. And he is compelled to this light. So he's walking, stumbling to this light. And again, they are like watching him. They're like, we don't care. Do whatever you want, man. They don't stop him. He goes out into the light, and now he's outside, and it's pure light, okay? He's left the cave, and at first he's in pain, and he struggles to reorientate himself to this new world, but then eventually he falls in love with this world. It's a beautiful world, and it's like for him, heaven. And he's like, oh my God, this is the real world. The cave is a fake world that we created ourselves. Let me go back there and tell everyone about the truth. And when he goes back, the elite, don't stop him. Like, whatever you want, man, do whatever you want, okay? So they who are in power, you think they have an army, you think they have magic, and you think that they're evil, but really, all their power rests on our belief in their power, okay? They themselves don't have any power except to manipulate us. Okay, that's something you need to understand. Now, the third thing you need to understand is that even though this is a fake world, people don't know this. They think it's real. In fact, they believe it is so real that they are willing to die for it. So that when this man who's seen heaven, who's seen the truth, who's come back to tell everyone, these chains that you have aren't real. We can break free and escape into the real world. If he dares to tell them this, together they will kill him. Okay, do you understand? So in other words, the reality is a hallucination. It's created by us, but we fall in love with it. We're so attached to it psychologically and emotionally that if anyone tells us it's fake, we kill them for it. Okay? So it's these three things I want you to keep in mind as we explore our world. Because our world is actually just Plato's cave. All right, so let me show you how. All right. So, you need a force in order to create this reality, to chain us together, okay? And this force, of course, is called the American Empire. All right, the empire. Basically, just the military. But they themselves don't really want to control this world because they're an army, okay? So what they do is they allow the creation of a financial order, a global financial order, which then constructs the game that we play, okay? And these people then construct the reality that we live in, okay? So this is the global financial order. And what is this global financial order? Well, at the very top is something called the Bank of International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, okay? The central bank of central banks. Below them is the World Bank, the IMF, International Monetary Fund, which controls the rules of the global financial order. And then below them are something called the central banks, okay? So the Federal Reserve in the United States, the People's Bank of China in China, okay? The Bank of England in England, okay? So together they create the global financial order. And what is the global financial order? It's just to use the US dollar as a main mechanism of wealth extraction and wealth storage, okay? Really simple. The US dollar. Another way of understanding these people is to think of them as the game masters, okay? The ones above us who's constructed the game and controlling the rules of the game as we play it, okay? The game masters. Okay, so once the game has been created with the rules and incentives, now we can play the game. And this game is called the global economy. All right? So when China trades with the United States, when you go off to Europe on vacation, you're all participating in a game created by the financial order, okay? And the purpose of this this global economy is to have everyone play as much as possible so that wealth can be transferred from the world to the United States, the powers that be, okay? And they do this through two mechanisms. The first is the US dollar. So every time you use the US dollar, you're actually paying a tax to America because America has the power to print as much US dollars as it wants, okay? And the second way that it does this is through something called price hierarchy, okay? A price hierarchy. So the global economy is divided into tiers, okay? So resources are considered the cheapest, even though in reality it should be the most expensive, right? Because resources are limited, they're finite. Above resources, of course, is manufacturing. And above manufacturing is knowledge economy. And then the highest is finance, okay? Basically the game masters. All right, so and as we can see, once with this price hierarchy in place, what we can do now is divide the world according to the specialties, okay? So resource, of course, would be Russia. Russia, the Middle East, the GCC, okay? Saudi Arabia, these places, okay? So these places provide resources. Manufacturing then would be China, right? Knowledge would be Europe and the Five Eyes, okay? Basically the Anglosphere, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, Britain, and then finance, of course, the United States. Okay? Sorry. The United States. All right, so as you can see, this is a system that benefits the United States and its allies to the detriment of China and Russia. Okay? But this is how the game is structured. Of course, if the United States doesn't like you, what it can do is not allow you to play this game. And these countries, of course, would be North Korea and Iran, among other countries, okay? So China and Russia isn't happy about the system, but at least they get to play. Iran and North Korea are not even allowed to play the game of the global economy. All right? Now, of course, you can't have people believing that, okay, this entire global economy is structured so that the West can steal resources from everyone else, okay? So what you do is you create another layer called the rules-based international order. Okay, multilateral organizations, which includes the UN and the WTO, okay, World Trade Organization. Okay, this is called the rules-based international order. But it's really controlled by the empire, okay? So all these are just basically shadows on the wall that the empire is creating, projecting, okay? To fool us into behaving the way the empire wants. All right. So now that you have the system in place, what you need to do is indoctrinate people into believing that the system is fair, just, and good, okay? And you do that through three mechanisms. These three mechanisms, of course, are education, media, and culture, right? What is education? Well, schools, guys, and universities, academia. You think that you go to university to learn knowledge. No, you don't. You go to university to be brainwashed into believing that this system is not just fair, but actually what really makes this system work is the rules-based national order. Okay? You don't even think about empire. So that's education. Then, of course, you have media, which is CNN, BBC, New York Times. Each time you read an article, you think you're receiving news. You're not receiving news. You're being brainwashed into believing that this order is fair, just, and appropriate, okay? A phrase that you'll keep on hearing over and over is rules-based national order. Okay, but it's not a rules-based national order. It's Plato's cave. It's a deception. And the last, of course, is culture, which is Hollywood. And, you know, television shows, sitcoms, okay, things that you absorb every day. There's high culture and there's low culture. All right, so these are three mechanisms in which this order is basically indoctrinated into everyone, so that you don't even know this is a deception. Okay, you believe that this is reality itself, and this is all to create values and norms. Okay, just the way you see the world, which allows for the creation of a legal structure. So that if you break the rules, it's not that the elite will come after you. They don't have to come after you because everyone else will come after you. Okay? If you're that guy who discovers that this is all deception, they'll kill you. Okay? Not the elite, but the people around you will kill you because you're breaking their fantasy. Okay? You're destroying their fantasy. All right? So this is a very effective system.
And before we even start, let me just say, if you've ever felt like people were trying to dim your light, if you've ever noticed that when you started doing better, certain people got weird around you, if you've ever sensed that your growth made others uncomfortable, this video is for you, and this reaction is for you, because there's something real happening here. There is a reason why some people don't want you to succeed. There is a reason why your transformation threatens certain individuals. There is a reason why your potential scares people who are comfortable with mediocrity. So let me get set up. I've got my coffee, I've got my notebook, because I know I'm going to want to write down some gems, and I've got my mind open and ready. This is about to be a journey of self-discovery and empowerment. Let's get into it. All right, hitting play now. Okay, the video starts with some intense music and visuals of lions, eagles, warriors, immediately setting a tone of power and strength. I'm already feeling the energy. And then the narrator's voice comes in, deep and commanding. They see something in you that terrifies them, not because you've done anything to hurt them, not because you've threatened them, but because your very existence challenges everything they've built their identity on. Whoa. Right out the gate, we're going deep. The narrator is saying that it's not about what you do to these people, it's about what you represent. Your existence itself is the threat. The video continues. You see, most people are living in cages they've built for themselves. They've accepted limitations. They've settled for less. They've convinced themselves that their current reality is all that's possible, and they've made peace with that. They've built an entire identity around their limitations. Man, this is already hitting. Because it's true, isn't it? Most people do this. They hit a certain point in life and they just stop. They stop growing, stop dreaming, stop pushing. And they rationalize it. This is just how life is. I'm being realistic. Dreams are for young people. They build an entire identity around being stuck, around being limited, around being realistic, which is often just another word for defeated. And then you come along. The narrator continues. And then you come along refusing to accept those same limitations. You come along with dreams that society says are unrealistic. You come along with standards that others call impossible. You come along with a vision that makes their settled for life look small. And that terrifies them. Bro, this is it right here. You're not doing anything to them. You're just refusing to play small. You're just refusing to accept what they've accepted. You're just living by different standards. And your refusal to settle is a mirror that shows them their own compromises. Your ambition highlights their complacency. Your growth exposes their stagnation, and they can't handle it. The video is now showing imagery of crabs in a bucket, that famous metaphor for how crabs will pull down any crab trying to escape. And the narrator is explaining, this is called crab mentality. When one crab tries to escape the bucket, the others pull it back down. Not because they're evil, not because they hate that crab, but because if that crab escapes, it proves that escape was always possible, and they can't handle that truth. This is exactly what happens with people. When you start escaping the bucket, the mediocrity, the limitation, the normal life, others will try to pull you back, not necessarily because they hate you, but because your escape proves their cage was always unlocked. They could have left any time, they just chose not to. And facing that truth that they've been choosing limitation is too painful. So instead of facing it, they try to pull you back down. They try to convince you that escape is impossible, that you're being unrealistic, that you should just settle like they did. The narrator is now getting into specifics about what threatens people. Threat number 1, your self-belief. They're terrified of your self-belief. Not arrogance, but self-belief. The quiet confidence that you can achieve what you set out to achieve. The unwavering faith in your own potential. This terrifies people who have abandoned belief in themselves. Man, this is real. There's a difference between arrogance and self-belief. Arrogance is thinking you're better than others. Self-belief is knowing you're capable of more than your current circumstances. And when you have genuine self-belief, when you know you're going to make it, when you're not hoping or wishing but knowing, it creates this energy that makes others uncomfortable. Because most people have lost that. They've had their self-belief beaten out of them by life, by failure, by criticism, by fear. So when they see someone who still has it, who still believes unshakably in themselves, it reminds them of what they used to have before they gave up. And that reminder is painful. I'm thinking about my own journey and how this has played out. When I started believing in myself, really believing, not in a delusional way but in a I'm going to put in the work and I'm going to succeed way, certain people got weird. They started making sarcastic comments, questioning my decisions, predicting my failure. And it wasn't because they were bad people. It was because my belief highlighted their unbelief. My confidence exposed their doubt. My faith in myself challenged their faithlessness in themselves. The video continues with the second threat. Threat number 2. Your refusal to complain. They're terrified that you don't complain like they do. They bond over complaints. They find solidarity in suffering. They connect through shared misery. But you see problems as challenges to overcome, not excuses to hide behind. And that breaks their entire social framework. This one is powerful because it's so true about how many people operate. They bond over negativity. Their friendships are built on complaining about work, about relationships, about life, about everything. Misery loves company. And when everyone's miserable together, it feels normal. It feels like this is just how life is. But when you show up and you're not complaining, when you're facing the same challenges but with a different mindset, seeing them as opportunities rather than obstacles, it disrupts their whole dynamic. They can't relate to you anymore. They can't pull you into the complaint spiral. They can't use you to validate their victimhood. And more than that, your positive approach challenges their negative framework. If you can face challenges without complaining, what's their excuse? If you can stay optimistic in difficult circumstances, why can't they? Your refusal to participate in the complaint culture threatens the foundation of how they interact with the world. The narrator is now on the third threat. Threat number 3. Your willingness to be different. They're terrified of your willingness to be different, to stand out, to go against the grain. Most people are terrified of judgment, of criticism, of not fitting in, so they conform. They follow the crowd. They do what's expected. But you're willing to be weird, to be different, to chart your own path. And that level of courage terrifies them because they've spent their whole lives trying to blend in. This is hitting home because I've lived this. Society has this incredible pressure to conform, to do things the normal way, to follow the script, go to school, get a job, work for 40 years, retire, die. And most people follow that script not because it's what they want, but because it's what's expected. Because deviating from it means facing judgment, criticism, questions, doubt from others. But when you're willing to deviate, when you're willing to start a business instead of getting a job, when you're willing to pursue a passion instead of a paycheck, when you're willing to live unconventionally, it takes courage that most people don't have. And your courage highlights their cowardice. Your willingness to be different exposes their need to conform. Your independence reveals their dependence on approval. The video is showing images of people breaking free from chains, birds flying out of cages, and the symbolism is powerful. The narrator continues, threat number 4, your personal growth. They're terrified of your commitment to personal growth. While they're staying the same year after year, you're evolving, learning, improving, transforming. Every book you read, every skill you develop, every habit you build, it widens the gap between who you're becoming and who they've remained. And that gap terrifies them. Man, this is real. Personal growth is threatening to people who aren't growing, because growth creates distance. When you're both stuck, you're equals, you're on the same level. But when you start growing, reading, learning, improving, developing yourself, you start pulling away, not in an arrogant way, but just as a natural consequence of growth. And that creates discomfort. Suddenly you're talking about things they don't understand. You're interested in things they find boring. You're setting standards they find extreme. You're becoming someone they can't relate to anymore. And instead of being inspired by your growth, instead of being motivated to grow themselves, many people feel threatened. They feel like you're leaving them behind. They feel like you think you're better than them. So they try to pull you back. They mock your reading. They call your self-improvement obsessive. They say you've changed in a negative way. They try to make you feel bad for growing. But here's the truth. You should change. If you're the same person year after year, you're not growing, you're stagnating. The video is now transitioning to the 5th threat. Threat number 5, your boundaries. They're terrified of your boundaries, your ability to say no, your refusal to be used, manipulated, or taken advantage of. They're used to people being doormats, being people pleasers, being afraid of conflict. But you value yourself enough to set boundaries. You respect yourself enough to enforce them. And that level of self-respect threatens people who are used to exploiting others' lack of it. Yo, this one is huge. Boundaries are so threatening to certain people because boundaries prevent exploitation. Think about it. Who gets upset when you set boundaries? People who benefited from you not having any. Who gets angry when you start saying no? People who were used to you saying yes to everything they wanted. When you had no boundaries, you were useful. You were controllable. You were exploitable. They could call you anytime, ask anything of you, expect you to drop everything for them, and you would. But when you develop self-respect, when you start valuing your time and energy, when you start saying no, that doesn't work for me, suddenly you're difficult, you're selfish. You've changed. No, you've just stopped allowing yourself to be used. And the people who benefited from using you will absolutely be threatened by your boundaries. They'll test them. They'll try to guilt you into dropping them. They'll try to manipulate you back into being the doormat you used to be. But healthy people respect boundaries. They might even be inspired by them to set their own. So if someone is threatened by your boundaries, that tells you everything you need to know about how they viewed you. As a resource to exploit, not a person to respect. The narrator is now getting into deeper psychological territory. Threat number 6, your authenticity. Your willingness to be your true self without apology. Most people are wearing masks, playing roles, pretending to be what they think others want them to be. They've lost touch with who they really are. But you're comfortable in your own skin. You're authentic. You're real. And that level of genuineness threatens people who are living fake lives. This is deep, because authenticity is rare. Most people are performing. They're curating their image, managing their reputation, playing the game of trying to be what others want. They have a work self, a family self, a friend self, a social media self. All these different masks they wear, depending on the audience. But authentic people, they're the same person in every context. They don't change who they are based on who's watching. They're comfortable with themselves, their quirks, their flaws, their truth. And that authenticity is magnetic, but also threatening. It's magnetic because people are drawn to realness in a world full of fakeness. But it's threatening because it exposes everyone else's performance. When you're being authentically yourself and others are performing, it creates this tension. Your genuineness highlights their fakeness. Your comfort in your own skin exposes their discomfort in theirs. And instead of being inspired to drop their masks and be real too, many people get defensive. They attack your authenticity as being too much, or inappropriate, or unprofessional. But what they're really saying is, your authenticity makes me uncomfortable with my own fakeness, so I need you to tone it down so I can keep pretending. The video is showing powerful imagery now. A lion surrounded by sheep, an eagle among chickens, and the symbolism is clear. The narrator continues. Threat number 7, your vision. They're terrified of your vision. The fact that you see possibilities they can't see. The fact that you dream dreams they've given up on. The fact that you believe in a future they've stopped imagining. Your vision reminds them that they've stopped dreaming. And that reminder is terrifying. Man, this hits different because vision is so rare. Most people stop dreaming at some point. Life beats it out of them. Failure disappoints them. Responsibilities consume them. And slowly, they stop looking ahead with excitement and start just trudging through each day. They lose their vision for what's possible. They lose their imagination for what could be. They settle into the routine of what is. But visionaries, they never stop seeing what could be. They never stop imagining better futures. They never stop dreaming bigger dreams. And when a person without vision encounters a person with vision, it's jarring. The visionary is talking about futures the visionless person can't even imagine. They're excited about possibilities that seem impossible to others. And that excitement, that belief, that vision, it's threatening to people who've given up, because it proves that they didn't have to give up. They chose to, and facing that choice is painful. So instead of rekindling their own vision, they attack yours. They call you unrealistic, naive, delusional. They try to bring your vision down to the level of their limitation. But real visionaries don't let other people's lack of imagination limit their vision. They keep seeing, keep dreaming, keep believing. The narrator is now getting into what might be the most important threat. Threat number 8, your freedom. But perhaps what terrifies them most is your freedom. Your mental freedom, your emotional freedom, your financial freedom, your spiritual freedom. You're not controlled by fear like they are. You're not enslaved to approval like they are. You're not trapped by circumstances like they are. You're free. And free people terrify enslaved people, because freedom is contagious. This is the root of it all, isn't it? Freedom is the ultimate threat to people who are enslaved. Mental freedom. You think for yourself instead of letting others think for you. You question narratives instead of blindly accepting them. You form your own opinions instead of adopting the crowd's beliefs. Emotional freedom. You're not controlled by your emotions or others' emotions. You can feel fear and act anyway. You can be hurt and still move forward. You're not a slave to feelings. Financial freedom. You're not dependent on a paycheck, on a job, on an employer. You've built income streams, savings, investments. You have options. You can walk away from situations that don't serve you. Spiritual freedom. You're not bound by guilt, shame, religious manipulation, or fear-based control. You have a genuine relationship with the divine, rather than performing for approval. All these freedoms are threatening to people who lack them. Because freedom is contagious. When enslaved people see a free person, it awakens something in them. It shows them that freedom is possible. And that realization is both inspiring and terrifying. Inspiring because it offers hope. Terrifying because it requires taking responsibility for their own enslavement. It's easier to stay enslaved and resent free people than to do the hard work of liberating yourself. The video is now transitioning from explaining the threats to explaining what to do about it. How to handle being threatening. The narrator's tone shifts from explanatory to empowering. What do you do when you realize you're threatening to others? Do you shrink? Do you dim your light? Do you make yourself smaller to make them comfortable? Absolutely not. Yes, this is what I needed to hear. Because the temptation when you realize you're threatening people is to tone it down, to hold back, to make yourself smaller. We've all felt this pressure. When your success makes someone uncomfortable, you feel guilty. When your growth makes someone insecure, you feel bad. When your freedom highlights someone's bondage, you feel like you should hide it. But that's exactly the wrong response. The narrator continues, your job is not to make others comfortable with their limitations. Your job is to live up to your potential. Your job is to be an example of what's possible. Your job is to shine so brightly that you inspire others to find their own light. This is powerful, because it reframes the whole situation. You're not trying to make people feel bad. You're trying to show them what's possible. Some people will be inspired. They'll see your growth and think, if they can do it, maybe I can too. They'll see your freedom and think, maybe I don't have to stay stuck. They'll see your success and think, maybe I can achieve my dreams too. Those are your people. Those are the ones who will celebrate you, support you, learn from you, grow with you. But some people will be threatened. They'll see the same things and feel attacked, exposed, challenged. They'll try to pull you down instead of lifting themselves up. And you have to be okay with that. You have to be okay with being threatening to people who are committed to staying small. The narrator is now giving specific advice. Action number 1. Unapologetically pursue your goals. Don't apologize for your ambition. Don't feel guilty for wanting more. Don't shrink your dreams to fit other people's limited imagination. Pursue your goals relentlessly, unapologetically, fearlessly. The right people will celebrate you. The wrong people will leave. Let them. Man, this is freeing. Because how much energy do we waste feeling guilty for wanting more, for having ambition, for pursuing big goals? We've been conditioned to be modest, to downplay our dreams, to act like success isn't that important to us, because if we're too ambitious, we're seen as greedy or selfish or arrogant. But there's nothing wrong with wanting to achieve great things. There's nothing wrong with working relentlessly toward goals that matter to you. And when you stop apologizing for your ambition, when you stop feeling guilty for your drive, when you stop shrinking to make others comfortable, you become unstoppable. The people who can't handle it will leave. Good. They weren't your people anyway. The people who celebrate it will stay. Those are your tribe. Action number 2. Protect your energy. Stop trying to convince people who don't want to be convinced. Stop explaining yourself to people who are determined to misunderstand you. Stop giving your energy to people who drain it. Protect your energy like it's sacred, because it is. This is so important. We waste so much energy trying to convince people who don't want to be convinced. Someone criticizes your business, you spend hours explaining your business model, your vision, your strategy. But they weren't asking because they wanted to understand. They were criticizing because they wanted to tear you down. Someone questions your life choices, you justify, explain, defend. But they're not genuinely curious, they're judging. Someone drains your energy with their negativity, you keep engaging, trying to help, trying to lift them up, but they don't want to be lifted, they want to pull you down. At some point you have to recognize when you're wasting energy. You have to protect your energy for the people and pursuits that actually matter. Not everyone deserves access to your energy. Not everyone deserves your time. Not everyone deserves your explanation. Guard your energy jealously. It's your most valuable resource. Action number 3. Surround yourself with other threats. Find other people who are threatening to the status quo. Other dreamers, other builders, other believers, other free people. Iron sharpens iron. Lions run with lions. Eagles don't flock with chickens. Yes, this is about finding your tribe, the people who are on the same frequency as you. When you're around people who are also growing, you don't feel threatening, you feel normal. When you're around people who are also ambitious, your drive doesn't seem excessive, it seems standard. When you're around other free people, you don't feel weird, you feel understood. The right community will accelerate your growth. They'll challenge you to be better. They'll celebrate your wins without jealousy. They'll support you through losses without judgment. They'll hold you accountable without making you feel small. But you have to be intentional about finding them. They're not just going to appear. You have to seek out other people who are committed to growth, excellence, freedom. Online communities, masterminds, networking events, mentorship programs. There are places where ambitious, growth-oriented people gather. Find them, join them, contribute to them. And be willing to outgrow communities that no longer serve you. Just because you've been part of a group for years doesn't mean you have to stay if you've outgrown it. Action number 4. Use the hate as fuel. When people criticize you, doubt you, hate on you, don't let it stop you. Use it as fuel. Let it motivate you. Let it prove that you're on the right track. Because if you weren't threatening the status quo, they wouldn't care enough to criticize you. Man, this reframes criticism completely. Because criticism stings, hate hurts, doubt is discouraging. But what if we saw it differently? What if criticism meant we were doing something significant? What if hate meant we were making an impact? What if doubt meant we were attempting something worth attempting? Nobody criticizes people who are playing small. Nobody hates on people who are staying in their lane. Nobody doubts people who are doing exactly what's expected. They criticize, hate, and doubt people who are doing something different, something bigger, something that threatens their worldview. So in a weird way, criticism is confirmation. It confirms that you're doing something that matters, something significant enough that people feel compelled to have an opinion about it. The more criticism you receive, the bigger the impact you're making. So don't let it stop you. Let it confirm that you're on the right path. The video is now building to its conclusion, and the music is swelling. The imagery is powerful. Warriors standing strong, lions roaring, eagles soaring. The final message. You were not born to blend in. You were not created to play small. You were not designed to make everyone comfortable. You were born to stand out, to disrupt, to challenge, to inspire, to lead. Your very existence is a threat to mediocrity, to limitation, to the status quo. And that's exactly what you're supposed to be. Yo, this is it. This is the truth right here. We're not supposed to blend in. We're not supposed to be like everyone else. We're not supposed to settle for normal. We're supposed to be exceptional. We're supposed to push boundaries. We're supposed to challenge assumptions. We're supposed to show people what's possible. The narrator continues. So embrace being a threat. Embrace making people uncomfortable with your growth. Embrace being the person who doesn't fit in their box. Embrace being the example of what's possible when someone refuses to accept limitations. This is about embracing your power instead of apologizing for it. Embracing your potential instead of hiding it. Embracing your uniqueness instead of conforming. The world doesn't need more people playing small. The world needs you at your full power. The world needs you living up to your potential. The world needs you being the threat you were born to be. And the video ends with that powerful statement. Be the threat they're terrified of. The world is waiting. The screen fades to black. The music fades out. And I'm sitting here fired up. Wow. That was exactly what I needed to hear. And I bet it's what a lot of you needed to hear too. Let me process all of this because there's so much to unpack. First, the video identified 8 specific things that make you threatening. Your self-belief, your refusal to complain, your willingness to be different, your personal growth, your boundaries, your authenticity, your vision, your freedom. And each one of these is threatening because it challenges something that most people have accepted. Self-doubt, victimhood, conformity, stagnation, people-pleasing, fakeness, limited imagination, and various forms of bondage. When you refuse to accept what they've accepted, it forces them to confront their own choices, and that confrontation is uncomfortable. So they try to pull you back down, to make you accept the same limitations they've accepted. But the video's message is clear. Don't shrink. Don't dim your light. Don't make yourself smaller. Instead, pursue your goals unapologetically. Protect your energy. Surround yourself with other threats. Use criticism as fuel. Embrace being a threat. This isn't about being arrogant or trying to make people feel bad. It's about living up to your potential, regardless of how that makes others feel. And here's what really struck me. Being threatening isn't a bug, it's a feature. It's not something to avoid or fix. It's a sign that you're doing something right. If everyone's comfortable with you, you're probably playing too small. If nobody's threatened by you, you're probably not making enough impact. If everyone approves of you, you're probably conforming too much. The most impactful people in history were threatening to the status quo. They disrupted, they challenged, they made people uncomfortable, and that's exactly why they were able to create change. Was threatening to people invested in segregation. Steve Jobs was threatening to people comfortable with technology as it was. Elon Musk is threatening to people invested in the traditional auto and space industries. Any person creating significant change is going to be threatening to people invested in the current system. So if you're trying to create change, in your own life, in your community, in your industry, in the world, you should be threatening to some people. That's not a problem. That's confirmation you're on the right track. Now, let me get personal for a moment. This video is making me think about my own life, and the people who've been threatened by my growth. I've had friends who stopped talking to me when I started taking my goals seriously. I've had family members who questioned my decisions when I started doing things differently. I've had acquaintances who made sarcastic comments when I started succeeding. And for a long time, I internalized that. I felt guilty. I thought maybe I was being arrogant or showing off or changing in a negative way. But this video is helping me see it differently. They weren't reacting to me being arrogant. They were reacting to me being free. To me refusing to accept the limitations they'd accepted. To me growing in ways they weren't willing to grow. And that wasn't about me being wrong. That was about them being uncomfortable. I don't need to apologize for my growth. I don't need to feel guilty for my ambition. I don't need to shrink to make others comfortable. And neither do you. If people are threatened by you, ask yourself, are you being genuinely harmful, or are you just being powerful? Are you actually hurting people, or are you just challenging their comfort? Most of the time, it's the latter. You're not hurting anyone. You're just growing in ways that make their stagnation visible. You're just succeeding in ways that make their settling obvious. You're just being free in ways that highlight their bondage. And that's not your problem to fix. That's their work to do. Your job is to keep growing, keep succeeding, keep being free. Now I want to address something important. There's a difference between being threatening in a healthy way and being genuinely harmful or arrogant. This video isn't endorsing arrogance, cruelty, or lack of empathy. It's not saying you should try to make people feel bad or be dismissive of their struggles. Being a healthy threat means pursuing your goals without apology, but not putting others down in the process. Setting boundaries, but doing so respectfully. Being authentic, but not using authenticity as an excuse to be cruel. Having vision, but being humble enough to learn and adjust. Being free, but not judging those who are still finding their freedom. You can be threatening to the status quo while still being kind, compassionate, and respectful to individuals. In fact, the most powerful threats are people who are simultaneously strong and kind, ambitious and humble, free and compassionate. Because when you combine power with kindness, when you pair ambition with humility, when you match freedom with compassion, you become irresistible. You become the kind of person who doesn't just threaten the status quo, but actually transforms it. All right, let me bring this home with some final thoughts. If you've made it this far in the video, you're probably someone who resonates with this message. You're probably someone who has felt the weight of other people's discomfort with your growth. You're probably someone who has experienced the phenomenon of being pulled down by people who should be lifting you up. And I want you to know, you're not crazy. You're not imagining it. It's real. People are threatened by growth, success, freedom, vision, boundaries, authenticity. But that's not a reason to stop. That's not a reason to shrink. That's not a reason to play small. That's confirmation that you're doing something significant. So keep going, keep growing, keep pursuing your vision, keep setting boundaries, keep being authentic, keep freeing yourself from whatever has enslaved you. The right people will celebrate you. They'll be inspired by you. They'll grow with you. The wrong people will be threatened. They'll criticize you. They'll try to pull you down. Let them reveal themselves. Let them leave. Make room for the people who can handle your light. Because the world doesn't need you to dim your light. The world needs you to shine so bright that you illuminate the path for others. Be the threat you were born to be. Alright everyone, that's it for today. This video hit me hard, and I hope my reaction gave you even more to think about. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Have you experienced people being threatened by your growth? How did you handle it? Which of the 8 threats resonates with you most? Which one do you need to embrace more fully? What's one area where you've been playing small to make others comfortable? How can you stop? Who are the people in your life who celebrate your growth rather than being threatened by it? What does being a healthy threat look like to you? Let's build a community of people who support each other's growth rather than being threatened by it. If this video fired you up, if it gave you permission to stop shrinking, if it reminded you of your power, smash that like button. If you want more content that empowers you to live up to your full potential, subscribe to the channel. And share this with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's been playing small. Someone who's been feeling guilty for their growth. Someone who needs permission to be the threat they were born to be. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being willing to grow. Thank you for being willing to be threatening to the status quo. The world needs more people like you. Until next time, stand tall, shine bright, and be unapologetically you. Peace, power, and purpose. There's your very long commentary on why they are terrified of you. An empowerment message about personal growth and not shrinking to make others comfortable.